Paris, October 1943, a crowded café on the Boulevard Saint-Germain. German officers laugh over cognac at a corner table. Cigarette smoke drifts through yellow lamplight. A waiter moves between tables. A man in a dark coat enters, orders nothing, and walks directly toward the corner. The conversation stops mid-sentence. One officer slumps forward. The others stare, confused, as his blood spreads slowly across the white tablecloth, seeping into the linen like spilled wine. For a heartbeat, no one understands what has happened. There is no echo, no ringing report, no instinctive flinch. They heard nothing. No gunshot, no explosion. Just a soft mechanical click, quieter than a champagne cork eased gently from a bottle. So quiet that the human brain struggles to register it as danger. By the time realization begins to form, it is already too late. The man in the dark coat is moving, calm, unhurried. He does not run, he does not look back. He rises from his chair, steps around the collapsing body and heads for the door, as if excusing himself from dinner. Inside his sleeve, still warm from use, is what looks less like a weapon and more like a length of industrial plumbing. Crude, ugly, almost laughable in its simplicity, utterly lethal. There are no elegant curves to admire, no polished steel catching the light, no proud manufacturer's stamp meant to inspire confidence or prestige. It does not look like a soldier's weapon or a hero's sidearm. By every aesthetic standard, it is the ugliest firearm ever issued to British forces, and yet, across occupied Europe, it inspires more fear than rifles or machine guns ever could. Because rifles announce themselves, explosions warn the room. This does neither. It kills quietly, efficiently, and without drama. And in the shadow war of intelligence, resistance, and assassination, that silence makes it far more terrifying than any loud weapon ever could be. This is the story of the Welrod pistol, a weapon so quiet that victims died before witnesses realized shots had been fired, a weapon so simple it could not fail at the critical moment, a weapon designed not to win battles but to win a different kind of war entirely, one fought in shadows, in occupied cities, in the 6 inches between a resistance fighter's hand and a traitor's temple. Spring 1941. Britain stands alone. The continent has fallen. From Norway to Greece, the swastika flies over Europe's capitals. Winston Churchill forms a new organisation, the Special Operations Executive. Its mission, in Churchill's own words, is to set Europe ablaze. SOE agents parachute into darkness over France, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Norway. They organise resistance networks, plan sabotage, coordinate uprisings. But they face a problem that seems impossible to solve. When an SOE agent needs to eliminate a target silently, the options are medieval. A knife requires getting within arm's reach of the victim, close enough to smell their last meal, close enough to feel their breath. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and the struggle alerts everyone within earshot. Garrots demand perfect positioning and considerable strength. The victim thrashes, furniture crashes. Precious seconds tick away while the agent fights to maintain pressure, praying no one comes to investigate the noise. Poison is unpredictable. Some targets take hours to die, others survive entirely, and a poisoning always triggers an investigation, sweeps, arrests, executions. What SOE desperately needs is a firearm that can kill at close range without alerting every German soldier within a quarter mile. But conventional firearms are catastrophically loud. An unsuppressed pistol produces approximately 160 decibels at the muzzle. This is louder than a jet engine at takeoff, loud enough to cause immediate permanent hearing damage, loud enough to be heard clearly half a mile away on a quiet night. Even suppressed weapons of the era are deeply flawed. The suppressed Sten gun reduces noise to around 130 decibels. This is roughly equivalent to a jackhammer, useful for masking the distinctive crack of gunfire in the chaos of a firefight. Utterly useless for true silent killing. Standard pistol suppressors reduce sound to around 120 decibels, still loud enough to be heard clearly across a street, through walls, by anyone within 50 meters, and that is assuming the suppressor works perfectly, which they rarely do in field conditions. SOE needs something that has never existed before, a weapon so quiet it could be fired in a crowded building without drawing attention, a weapon so reliable it cannot malfunction when an agent's life depends on a single shot. A weapon so compact it disappears inside ordinary clothing. The specification seems impossible. But in a quiet town north of London, A small team of engineers is about to make the impossible real. Welwyn Garden City, a planned community 20 miles north of London. Neat houses, tidy gardens, nothing remarkable about it whatsoever, except for Station 9. The Inter-Services Research Bureau occupies an unremarkable building. No guards visible at the gates, no obvious security. Just another wartime office conducting vague research on vague topics that neighbours know better than to ask about. Inside, Major Hugh Reeves and a small team of engineers are working on a problem that has never been solved, creating a truly silent firearm. Their names have been largely lost to classification. The few documents that survived the war mention Reeves and little else. Even now, 80 years later, much of their work remains officially secret. They approach the challenge not as traditional gunsmiths, but as acoustic engineers. They understand that silencing a gunshot is not one problem, but three distinct problems, each requiring its own solution. First problem: the explosion of propellant gases escaping the barrel. This is what produces the characteristic bang of gunfire, the muzzle blast, the sound that echoes across battlefields and city streets. Second problem: the supersonic crack of the bullet breaking the sound barrier. Every object travelling faster than the speed of sound creates a sonic boom. A bullet is no exception. Even if the propellant gases are perfectly suppressed, a supersonic bullet announces itself to everyone within earshot. Third problem: the mechanical action of the weapon cycling. Semi-automatic pistols produce significant sound from their slides slamming back and forth, ejecting spent cases, chambering fresh rounds, metal on metal, violent and loud. To achieve true silence, all three sources must be eliminated. The Station 9 team begins with the simplest problem: the bullet. Standard 9mm parabellum ammunition, the most common pistol round in Europe, travels at approximately 350 meters per second, well above the speed of sound, which is approximately 343 meters per second at sea level. Every shot produces a sonic crack, a miniature thunderclap that cannot be suppressed by any means. Physics is not negotiable. The solution is brutally simple. Use standard 9mm rounds but reduce the propellant charge. Bring the muzzle velocity down to approximately 290 meters per second, below the speed of sound, subsonic, silent in flight. This creates a new problem. Reduced velocity means reduced energy, less stopping power, less penetration, a higher risk that the target survives the first shot. But the engineers calculate that a subsonic 9mm round still delivers more than enough energy to be lethal at close range. The Welrod is never intended for precision shooting at 20 meters, never meant for marksmanship contests or battlefield exchanges. It is designed for encounters measured in steps, not distance. Pressed against the target's body, fired across a cramped room, a narrow hallway, or the shadowed interior of a vehicle. At these distances, even reduced velocity is absolutely fatal, and accuracy becomes almost irrelevant. The target fills the frame. The margin for error disappears. The use of subsonic ammunition solves the second problem. The violent crack of a bullet breaking the sound barrier vanishes, replaced by a dull, muted report that blends into the background of a city at night or the low hum of a building at rest. But silence is not a single problem with a single solution. With the sonic crack eliminated, the design team turns their attention to the third and most stubborn enemy of stealth: mechanical noise. Semi-automatic pistols are marvels of engineering, but they are loud machines even when suppressed. Pull the trigger and a carefully choreographed sequence begins. Metal strikes metal. Springs compress and release. The firing pin hits the primer. The propellant ignites. The bullet accelerates down the barrel. Gas pressure forces the slide backward. The spent casing ejects with a sharp snap. The slide strips a fresh round from the magazine and slams forward again, announcing its presence through vibration and sound. In a quiet room, that clatter is unmistakable. For an assassin working inches from the target, that noise is unacceptable. The Welrod's designers understand that true silence requires sacrificing speed, convenience, and modern automation. What remains must be simple, deliberate, and nearly mute, even if it means every shot is a conscious manual act rather than an effortless pull of the trigger. All of this happens in fractions of a second, and all of it is loud. The slide cycling produces a distinctive metallic clack. The spent case clattering on the ground produces another noise. Even the trigger mechanism itself creates sound. For a weapon intended to kill in complete silence, this is unacceptable. The Station 9 team makes a decision that horrifies traditional firearms designers. They eliminate the semi-automatic action entirely. The Welrod uses a bolt-action mechanism. After each shot, the shooter must manually work a knurled knob at the rear of the weapon. This rotates the bolt, unlocking it from the barrel. The shooter pulls the knob back. The spent case extracts. The shooter pushes the knob forward. A fresh round chambers from the magazine. The shooter rotates the knob, locking the bolt. Then they can fire again. It is slow. Painfully slow compared to a semi-automatic, but it is virtually silent. The only sound is a soft mechanical click as the bolt operates. Quieter than a door latch, quieter than a light switch. For a weapon designed to kill one specific target and then disappear, rate of fire is irrelevant. What matters is silence and simplicity. The bolt-action mechanism has almost nothing that can break or malfunction. No springs under high tension, no complex timing, no delicate parts that fail when caked with mud or frozen in sub-zero temperatures. An SOE agent parachuting into occupied Norway in January does not need a pistol that can fire 15 rounds in 3 seconds. They need a pistol that will fire 1 round flawlessly after being buried in snow for 2 weeks. The Welrod delivers this reliability. But the team still faces their greatest challenge, the propellant gases. When a bullet leaves a barrel, the expanding gases behind it create a miniature explosion at the muzzle. This muzzle blast is what produces most of the sound from a gunshot. Suppressing it requires controlling and cooling those gases before they reach the atmosphere. Early suppressors used simple expansion chambers. The gases entered a larger space, expanded, cooled slightly, then vented out. This reduced sound, but not enough. Certainly not to the level SOE requires. The Station 9 engineers designed something revolutionary, an integrated suppressor that is not an attachment, but the weapon itself. The entire front section of the Welrod, comprising roughly 2/3 of its total length, is suppressor. Inside this cylinder is a series of baffles and expansion chambers arranged like a labyrinth. When the weapon fires, propellant gases follow the bullet into this maze. They enter the first expansion chamber and spread outward, losing pressure and velocity. Then they encounter a baffle with a small hole in the center. The gases funnel through this constriction into another expansion chamber, and another, and another. Each stage strips away more energy, more heat, more pressure. By the time the gases reach the end of the suppressor and vent to atmosphere, they are moving slowly, almost gently. The explosive violence of combustion has been transformed into something barely audible. But the engineers add one more innovation: rubber wipes. Between several of the baffles they install thin rubber discs. Each disc has a small hole in the center, slightly smaller than the diameter of the bullet. When the bullet passes through, it pushes the rubber aside. The rubber immediately seals behind the bullet, trapping gases in the chamber behind it. This creates an additional barrier, more resistance, more reduction in sound. The rubber wipes degrade with each shot, slowly tearing and losing effectiveness. But in the short term, they provide exceptional sound suppression. The result exceeds all expectations. A standard 9mm pistol produces approximately 160 decibels at the muzzle, loud enough to cause immediate permanent hearing damage, loud enough to wake sleeping people 3 blocks away. The Welrod produces approximately 73 decibels. This is roughly equivalent to a car door closing. A cough, a book dropped on a table. At 10 meters distance the sound drops even further, becoming nearly indistinguishable from ambient urban noise. Footsteps, traffic, wind rattling windows. In a crowded room, someone standing 3 meters away might not realize a shot has been fired. They might glance around, wondering what that soft sound was, and then return to their conversation. Meanwhile, across the room, someone is dying. The completed Welrod measures just 14 inches in overall length. It weighs approximately 2.5 pounds when loaded. The grip is a simple metal cylinder wrapped in knurled rubber to improve purchase. It conceals a 6-round detachable magazine. Later versions hold 8 rounds. The magazine releases via a button at the base of the grip. From the grip, the weapon extends forward in a straight cylinder. No curves, no tapers, just a tube. The barrel is hidden inside the suppressor assembly. Fixed, non-removable. The entire suppressor and barrel are one welded unit. At the rear, a knurled knob protrudes. This is the bolt handle. Rotate, pull, push, rotate. 4 movements to chamber around. The trigger guard is absent. Just a small curved trigger emerging from the underside of the grip. This allows the weapon to be fired while wearing heavy gloves, essential for operations in Scandinavia during winter. Sights are minimal. A fixed front blade, a shallow rear notch. They are barely adequate for aimed fire, but the well rod is never intended for precision shooting at distance. Effective range is approximately 23 meters. Optimal range is considerably less. 5 meters, 3 meters, contact distance. This is not a weapon for firefights. This is an assassin's tool, designed to be pressed against the base of a skull, fired through a coat pocket, discharged from beneath a table in a restaurant. At these ranges, accuracy is academic. What matters is function, reliability, and above all, silence. The weapon's appearance is deliberately crude, utilitarian to the point of ugliness. It looks like something assembled in a garage from hardware store components. This is intentional. If captured, the well rod appears so simple that German intelligence might underestimate British technical capabilities, and if an agent must discard the weapon after use, its plain appearance helps it blend with industrial debris, a piece of pipe discarded in an alley, nothing worth a second glance. Production begins in late 1942. The exact numbers remain classified even today. Estimates range from 2,800 to 14,000 units manufactured during the war. The enormous variance reflects the extreme secrecy surrounding the program. Serial numbers are deliberately scattered to confuse any attempt to determine production quantities. Documentation is minimal. Much is destroyed immediately after the war. Even the manufacturer's identity is obscured. Some weapons bear markings suggesting production at the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield. Others appear to come from different facilities entirely. The truth is lost to classification. What is certain is that by early 1943, well rods begin appearing in occupied Europe. They arrive in supply drops, hidden in false-bottomed suitcases, smuggled aboard fishing boats, buried in dead drops for agents to retrieve. SOE provides minimal instruction. The weapon is nearly intuitive to operate. Load magazine, insert magazine, rotate bolt handle, pull back, push forward, rotate bolt handle to lock, fire, repeat. Field stripping requires only removing the grip to access the magazine well and bolt assembly. The suppressor unit is sealed, never opened, never serviced in the field. When the rubber wipes degrade after approximately 20 to 30 shots, the entire suppressor assembly is replaced. But most well rods never fire 20 rounds. Most fire 1, maybe 2. Then they disappear back into hiding, waiting for the next operation. The French resistance adopts a clinical term for certain operations: executive actions, the permanent removal of specific individuals whose continued existence threatens the network. German officers who distinguish themselves through particular cruelty towards civilians tend to die quietly. A shadow in a doorway, a soft click. The officer collapses. By the time his escorts react, the killer is 3 streets away. Collaborators who betray resistance networks stop talking permanently. One documented account describes a French police inspector known for torturing captured resistance members. He is found dead in his office, shot once through the temple. His secretary, working in the adjacent room, heard nothing. Not a gunshot, not a struggle, nothing. In Paris, the Maquis use well rods for operations that would be suicidal with conventional firearms. The café assassination is real. A Gestapo informant is eliminated in a crowded establishment on the Boulevard Saint-Germain. The killer walks out through a room full of people. None of them realize what happened until the body is discovered minutes later. The psychological impact is profound. Collaborators understand that betraying the resistance might mean death, but everyone understands that. What makes the well rod different is the silence. Death without warning, without sound, without any chance to call for help. A collaborator might be surrounded by German soldiers, sitting in a crowded police station, and still die before anyone realizes a weapon has been discharged. The silence removes any illusion of safety. In Denmark, the Holger Danske resistance group employs well rods extensively against Danish Nazis and German occupation authorities. Their targets include members of the Schulberg Corps, Danish volunteers serving with the SS, known for brutal reprisals against civilians. One operation targets a Schulberg Corps officer at his Copenhagen apartment. The agent enters the building in daylight. Neighbours are home. People pass in the hallway. The agent knocks on the apartment door. When it opens, one suppressed shot. The agent walks back down the stairs, out to the street. Gone. No one in the building reports hearing anything unusual. The body is discovered hours later by family. German intelligence in Denmark becomes increasingly paranoid. Officers begin varying their routes, changing schedules, travelling with larger escorts, but this only makes them more visible, more predictable in their unpredictability. The Welrod's silence means that the size of the escort is irrelevant. A well-positioned agent with a Welrod can eliminate a target walking in the centre of a group. The others might not realise their colleague is dead until he fails to keep walking. In Norway, SOE agents use Welrods during sabotage operations where the primary objective is destruction of infrastructure, but guards must be eliminated to reach the target. The heavy water sabotage operations at Vemork are the most famous. While the Welrod plays no direct role in the main assault, SOE agents operating in Norway carry them for precisely this scenario. Guards eliminated silently, no alarm raised. Demolition teams have the time they need to set charges properly. The seconds of confusion following a silent killing often mean the difference between successful demolition and capture. A guard disappears from his post. His relief finds him dead. Before the alarm can be raised, the charges detonate. The saboteurs are already kilometres away. The Norwegian resistance also uses Welrods against informants in occupied cities. German intelligence relies heavily on Norwegian collaborators to identify resistance members. These informants are targeted systematically. The message is clear. Collaboration has consequences, and those consequences come silently, without warning, regardless of German protection. German occupation forces are not ignorant of suppressed weapons. They develop several of their own. But German suppressor technology is designed for different purposes. The Walther PPK can be fitted with a screw-on suppressor that reduces sound to approximately 115 decibels. This is quieter than an unsuppressed pistol, but it is still clearly audible as a gunshot. Anyone within 30 meters will hear it distinctly. More importantly, German suppressed weapons are primarily designed to reduce shooter signature for snipers, making it harder to locate the firing position. This is useful in military operations but irrelevant for assassination in crowds. German intelligence recognizes that British agents possess a superior suppressed weapon. Captured Welrods are studied carefully. But German technical reports reveal a telling conclusion. The Welrod achieves its exceptional silence through compromises that German designers consider unacceptable. The bolt-action mechanism, the reduced ammunition, the inability to fire rapidly. German doctrine prioritizes firepower and rate of fire. A weapon that fires 6 rounds slowly is considered inferior to one that fires 15 rounds quickly, even if the slower weapon is quieter. This doctrinal difference means Germany never develops an equivalent. They continue using louder suppressed pistols because those pistols fit their tactical concepts. The British developed the Welrod because their tactical concepts are different. SOE is not fighting battles. They are fighting a shadow war where silence is more valuable than firepower. American intelligence, operating through the Office of Strategic Services, develops their own suppressed pistol, the high-standard HDM. The HDM is a suppressed .22 caliber pistol, semi-automatic, 10-round magazine, designed for the same covert operations that the Welrod serves. It achieves approximately 90 decibels of sound. This is impressively quiet, quieter than any other semi-automatic suppressed pistol of the era, but still noticeably louder than the Welrod. More significantly, the .22 caliber round limits effectiveness. The small bullet lacks stopping power. Multiple shots are often required to ensure a kill, and penetration through heavy winter clothing is unreliable. An OSS agent operating in Northern Europe during winter cannot rely on a .22 caliber round to penetrate a thick wool coat, a uniform jacket, and still retain enough energy to be immediately lethal. They might fire 3 or 4 times before the target goes down. Each additional shot increases noise, increases risk of detection, increases the chance something goes wrong. The Welrod's 9mm round, even with its reduced powder charge, delivers substantially more stopping power. One shot to the head or torso is reliably fatal. One shot means one opportunity for something to go wrong. One moment of sound, then silence again. In the grim arithmetic of silent killing, this makes all the difference. Place the 3 weapons side by side, the picture becomes clear. The Welrod achieves 73 decibels with a 9mm round, bolt action, 6 rounds, effective range 23 meters. The American HDM achieves 90 decibels with a 22 caliber round. Semi-automatic, 10 rounds, effective range approximately 20 meters. Yet German suppressed pistols rarely achieve better than 115 decibels. Various calibers, semi-automatic. Magazine capacity varies. In every category that matters for covert assassination, the Welrod is superior. It is quieter, it hits harder, it is more reliable in field conditions. The only category where it loses is rate of fire, and for the missions it is designed to perform, rate of fire is the least important factor. An SOE agent eliminating a target in an occupied city does not need to fire 6 rounds in 2 seconds. They need to fire 1 round that no one hears, then they need to disappear. The Welrod allows this. The alternatives do not. But the Welrod has one significant limitation. The integrated suppressor has a finite lifespan. The rubber wipes that seal around each bullet as it passes through the baffle stack degrade with each shot. They tear, they compress, they lose effectiveness. After approximately 20 to 30 shots, the suppressor becomes noticeably louder. After 50 shots, it is only marginally more effective than an unsuppressed pistol. The rubber has torn completely, gases blow through unimpeded. SOE addresses this through a replacement program. Agents are instructed to return Welrods to supply officers after approximately 20 shots. The entire suppressor assembly is replaced with a fresh unit. The weapon returns to full effectiveness. But this creates a logistics problem. In occupied territory, agents cannot simply return weapons for servicing. They must hide them, bury them, wait for clandestine meetings with supply officers who may not arrive for weeks. Some Welrods are undoubtedly fired well beyond their effective suppressor life because replacement is impossible. These weapons become progressively louder, still functional, still lethal, but no longer silent. This limitation is accepted as unavoidable. The technology to create a truly durable suppressor of this effectiveness does not exist in 1943. The rubber wipes are necessary for maximum sound reduction. And rubber degrades under heat and friction. There is no alternative. Despite this flaw, the Welrod remains the most effective covert assassination weapon of the entire war. Production continues through 1945. As Allied forces advance across Europe, the need for covert operations diminishes. Resistance networks emerge into the open. SOE agents transition from sabotage to coordination with conventional forces. The Welrod's moment passes. After the war, most are destroyed. A weapon designed for assassination in occupied territory has no obvious peacetime purpose. The extreme secrecy surrounding its development and use continues. Documents are classified. Veterans are forbidden from discussing it. But some Welrods survive. They appear in subsequent conflicts: Palestine, Malaya, Korea, Cyprus. Anywhere British intelligence needs a silent weapon for close-range work, the design influences later suppressed pistols. The concept of an integrated suppressor becomes standard. The use of subsonic ammunition becomes universal for truly silent operation. Modern suppressed pistols are far more advanced, better materials, better baffle designs, longer suppressor life. But they all owe a debt to Station 9 and the engineers who solved the impossible problem in 1942. Today, fewer than 100 Welrods are known to exist. Most are in museums or private collections. They are historical curiosities, relics of a different kind of war. But to the resistance fighters who used them in occupied Europe, they were something else entirely. They were hope, they were justice. They were the weapon that allowed the weak to strike back against overwhelming force. Silent, simple, deadly. The ugliest British pipe that ever saved lives by taking them. If you found this deep dive into forgotten weapons fascinating, subscribe for more untold stories from history's shadows. The subscribe button is free. The knowledge is priceless, and there are dozens more stories like this waiting to be told. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most important inventions are the ones that never make the headlines, the ones that do their work in silence, the ones that change history without anyone hearing them at all.